Hey, what's up, guys? It's Tyler here. Just prayed for you. Just prayed for your groups. Just prayed for the momentum that was generated by the men's retreat. The men's retreat was amazing. For those of you that were able to be there, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who are not able to make it this year, I want to encourage you even now to begin prioritizing that for next year because it was an awesome experience. One of the things I was just praying for you right now before I started this recording as we work through this passage of 2 Timothy. I was praying that the faith commitments that we made as men up on that mountain would be top of mind. And God would keep those on our mind and in our hearts as we come down the mountain, as we continue to get into work and family life and normal society and all these types of things, that those faith commitments that we're making, that we felt like God put on our hearts, would stay top of mind. So that's what I was praying for you. Let's get right into the scripture here. Where Ryan parked it last week. Cool message on keeping the main thing is where he ended last week's message. We're picking up right from there. 2 Timothy, if you have a Bible, get it out. 2 Timothy, or get it out on your phone. 2 Timothy chapter 2, beginning at verse 20, and we're going to read up through verse 26, and we're going to teach through that. It's kind of I love it when it's like this. It's like a built-in 3-point Bible lesson with a big idea, believe it or not. So I just love it when God's word is that clear. Here's how it starts. In a large house, there are articles not only of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. Some are for special purposes and some for common use. Those who cleanse themselves from the latter, the common use stuff, will be instruments for special purposes, made holy, useful to the master, and prepared to do any good work. And then he gives a list of 3 things to do, kind of like the how. But honestly, when I read that, I just thought there's something there. And by the way, I'm reading out of the NIV, the New International Version. Very common, the most common translation of the Bible. But I felt like as I was praying, there was more there that I couldn't quite understand based on that language. And so I did something, and I would encourage you to do this sometimes. I looked at a different translation of the Bible and just thought maybe I can see this from a different angle that makes a little bit more sense and could help me in trying to teach you guys. And so I went over to, what version is this? This is actually the New King James Version. So I don't, sometimes I study out of this. I don't often teach out of it, but I like the language. So I want to read those same verses to you. And I think they're actually clearer in this translation, which is rare. Here's what it says. But in a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also vessels of wood and clay, some for honor and some for dishonor. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from the latter, the vessels of dishonor, he will be a vessel for honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. The reason why that translation captured me is I think that's what we want to be as men. And I can't see you right now, but I'm picturing you and praying for you through this phone right now. I feel like that is our heart. That's your heart. We want to be vessels for honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. That is what we want. If there's a big idea, it's like we want to be vessels for honor, useful to the master, God, prepared for every good work. Now, what Paul does for Timothy is then in the next few verses, he gives a list of 3 things, 3 ways how we can become vessels of honor, useful to the master, prepared for every good work. So let's dive in. Let's look at them. And I'll bounce back and forth between translations as well. So the first thing he says, if you look at verse 22, it says, flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. That's the first way that we become vessels for honor, useful to the master, prepared for every good work as men. The first way is flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Pretty direct, right? Like pretty straightforward. This translation, the New King James says, flee also useful lusts, but pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. And I want to read you one more note. Youthful lusts are defined here as not merely illicit sexual desires. Obviously, we need to flee those, the illicit sexual desires of youth. For those of us who have, like, teenagers, boys and girls, especially boys, it's like, yeah, that's prevalent. But also such lusts as pride, a desire for wealth and power, jealousy, self-assertiveness, and an argumentative spirit. So the first thing that we're called to do in order to be vessels of honor, useful to the master, prepared for every good work, is, remember, that's the goal, is to flee youthful lusts and pursue faith with other people who want to pursue the Lord. This is literally what this group, what men's fraternity, what men's small groups are all about. We as a group of men are trying to help one another flee the evil, youthful lusts and desires and pursue righteousness and faith and love and truth with other men who are trying to call upon the Lord with us. This is exactly what we're trying to do. So my encouragement to you would be build that type of community in and amongst your men. That means you need to show up. That means you need to be honest and transparent and vulnerable. That means you need to be open when you have evil desires or youthful lusts that are kind of like pursuing or creeping back into your life, and you're trying to go, no, I'm trying to leave those behind. And you're pursuing righteousness and faith as a group. Another way to say that is there should be a process of growth in our lives. Like, we shouldn't be in the same spot as men in these groups as we were 6 months ago or a year ago. There should be an up and to the right, I think this is the way to do it through the phone, an up and to the right trajectory of growth and maturity. And maybe it's not like this, skyrocketing, but gradual over time. We should be able to look back and go, there's a difference. There's a difference. I'm fleeing, I'm running away from, I'm saying no to the evil things, the youthful lust that used to catch me up when I was younger. And there are more signs of spiritual growth. There are more signs of spiritual maturity. I'm becoming a better husband. I'm becoming a better father. I'm beginning to think of others first. I'm not perfect. We're far from perfect, but people can more readily see the evidence of the Holy Spirit doing work in our life. I think that's what Paul's alluding to. And sometimes we need some help pointing those things out or realizing, oh yeah, that's something that we shouldn't be doing. I'll give you a couple examples. Back when I was in college, and I was living with a guy who's actually a men's fraternity leader. His name's Tom. And we were living together down in, I think it was Westwood or Pacific Palisades or something like that. But we had an outgoing message on our phone. Back then we had answering machines. It'd be the equivalent of voicemails nowadays. And I left the outgoing message, and I quoted this long quote from a favorite movie. And in the quote, I used a curse word on the outgoing message. Now this is, I was leading a Bible study back then. I was on the leadership team at Bel Air Presbyterian Church for the college ministry there. And yet in my outgoing phone message to the world, I used a curse word. And there was a guy his name was Rod, and he was the leader of Athletes in Action at UCLA, that ministry. And he called to get a hold of me one time and listen to that message. And he totally laser beamed me in the message that he left. He said, Tyler, this is Rod. First of all, I got to tell you something. That outgoing message does not sound like a message or words of someone who is walking closely with the Lord. You got to clean that up, buddy. And then he left his message. I was like, I don't even remember what the message was, but that was the message for me. It was his way of saying, yeah, a guy who's walking with the Lord, whose life is supposed to look like this, you should be leaving stuff like that behind. Even though you're in college and even though you're imperfect, like that's, you shouldn't be dealing with that anymore. In situations like that. Here's another example. I remember when I was an associate pastor here, and Scott Farmer, my predecessor, was the lead pastor. I would meet with him regularly, and he was mentoring me and kind of helping prepare me for this role. And one time I asked him for feedback. Hey, is there anything I could do differently or better in meetings? I mean, you see me a lot. Like, give me some feedback here. And I'll never forget this. He goes, well, I'll tell you something you can leave behind if you kind of want to go like this in your leadership. He said, in meetings, you need to talk less and talk last. Right now, you talk too much and you usually talk first. And so he said, as you grow, and especially as a senior leader, you should talk much less, ask more questions, do a lot more listening, and talk last, because you tend to have strong opinion. I don't know if you knew this about me, tend to have strong opinions and speak with passion on things. And he goes, you blow other people out and you shut them down and you don't hear from other people, which makes your perspective even better too. So it's just two examples where guys squared me up and said, there's some things you need to leave behind that are like, these are things you struggle with when you were younger. And pursue, bring it back to you guys, pursue faith with other guys. That's the only one of the three that he says here. It's the only one that he says, hey, you got to do this with other people. I'll go back to it. I'll read it. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. So this leaving youthful lust behind and pursuing faith should be done along with other men who are trying to do the same. Don't do this alone. So show up to men's fraternity, be mindful of each other in prayer, make it a priority. Don't take time off. Like, you need this accountability to be able to do this to the stuff we're not supposed to be falling trapped to anymore, and to do this and grow in our upward trajectory of our life. Okay, that's the first thing. Here's the second thing he says. Verse 23. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments, because you know they produce quarrels. Okay, let's go back to the big idea. We want to be a vessel of honor, okay? Available, sanctified, and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. That's what we want. So the first way we do that, say no to youthful lusts and pursue faith with other men. That's the first way to do it. Here's the second way to do it. Don't have anything to do with foolish or stupid arguments that lead to quarrels. You want to be a vessel of honor as a man? You want to be useful to the master, prepared for every good work? Don't be someone who gets in arguments with people that are stupid, these are Paul's words. I know it sounds crass, but it's like he's speaking to men. Don't get in stupid arguments. Don't get in foolish arguments that lead to quarrels, that lead to fights. So if you look at your life right now, if you look at your relationships at home, if you look at your relationships at work, if you look at your relationships with your neighbors, if you look at your relationships with the guys that you do life with or coach with or hang out with, if you find yourself often in foolish or stupid arguments or arguing a lot, you might also notice that it leads to fights, it leads to quarrels, and it's not, here's what it's not going to lead. It's not going to lead to you or me becoming a vessel of honor. Useful, sanctified for the master, prepared for every good work. And that's our heart. That's what we want. So if we want that, avoid stupid and foolish arguments that lead to fights. We don't want to have an argumentative spirit. There was something, a graph that I came across recently that reminded me of this, because we are in a season of life where it seems like over the last 2 years especially, there have been so many arguments that have led to fights that sometimes I just go, that's so stupid. And one of the reasons I thought it was so stupid or foolish is that so many people were arguing over things that they really could not control. And I was brought back to this graph, and here's the graph. I quickly jotted it down. I'll hold it up to the camera. Here are things that matter to you. These are things that you can control. And where they overlap, this right here, those are things you should focus on. Does that make sense? Things that matter, things that you can control, here's what we should focus on. This part right here where they overlap. The overlap of things that matter and that we can control. That's what we should focus on. Yet I feel like so many people have focused on things that they may matter a whole lot to them in the last couple of years. It could be politics, it could be vaccine arguments, it could be how you do COVID, it could be whether or not you wear masks. They matter to them, but so many of them are not things that we can control. So why spend so much time focusing, much less arguing about them? It says you want to be a vessel of honor? Don't do that. Because arguments and fights, those are dishonoring. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, here's a third thing if we want to be a vessel of honor. And these are the last couple verses. It says, "And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but must be kind to everyone." Does that mark your life? Does that mark my life? Kind to everyone, able to teach, not resentful. Opponents must be gently instructed in the hope that God will grant them repentance, leading them to the knowledge of the truth, and they will come to their senses and escape from the trap of the devil, who has taken them captive to do his will. Paul says, when someone opposes you, you should communicate to them kindly and gently. When someone has an opposing thought, when someone has an opposing viewpoint, you should deal with them gently and kindly in a way that moves them closer to Jesus. Also, there's a phrase in there for those of us that are the Lord's servants, and that's what we want. We want to be the Lord's servants. We want to be a vessel of honor that the master can use, prepared for every good work. It says we should be kind to everyone, able to teach. How are we able to teach? In the way that does that mean we should all be able to teach the Bible? Well, in a way, yes. So that may scare you, like, oh, how do you teach the Bible? Here's what's really, it's in there, so I'm just going to teach it. You can't teach the Bible without knowing the Bible. I had and I don't know why I got a couple examples of UCLA. I think it's probably because I visited there last week with my son to do a little like football tour down there. So UCLA has been on my mind a little bit this week. I was thinking my football coach at UCLA had one meeting with our receivers every week where he didn't coach. He didn't do the teaching and the coaching. He had someone on the receivers team coach and teach all the other receivers. And one time, his name was Rick Neuheisel. One time I said, "Hey, Coach New, why do you have us teach and coach?" And he goes, "Oh, it's real simple. You can't teach something that you don't know. You have to know it. You have to learn it in order to teach it." So for us to be able to teach anything in the Bible, we have to know it. We have to learn it, which means the conviction there, the challenge there is like we should spend a lot of time reading our Bibles, probably more than we do right now. It's not talking about the gift of teaching. He says able to teach, which means we have to know it. So spending time in God's word, actually God's Spirit gives us, works in us, and hopefully produces someone who's a little bit more kind, a little bit more gentle to people that oppose us. So where when we have interactions with them, we move them a little bit closer to Jesus. So that's the lesson. I'm just going to recap it right there because it's 1, 2, 3. There are items, there are vessels in the house that are honorable and dishonorable. There's ones that you look at and you go, it's fine china, like your wedding china, and then there's the paper plates. We want to be the fine china, not the paper plates. So to be a vessel of honor, sanctified by the master, available for him, prepared for every good work, we do 3 things according to this passage. Number 1, we flee youthful lusts and pursue faith with men who are trying to do the same. So that's what we're doing right now. Keep doing that. Number 2, we avoid foolish and stupid arguments that lead to fights because that's dishonoring. So if we find ourselves arguing a lot and in fights a lot, maybe we should nip that in the bud. And then finally, we're respectful and kind to everybody, able to teach, but gentle in our instruction to people who oppose us. In other words, just a closing thought. I think when we're around people who think differently than us, we can choose to make a point or make a difference. Like a lot of people want to make a point, and Paul is saying, no, you want to make a difference. You want to move them closer to Jesus in your interactions with them if they oppose you. So you can be a man who makes a point, or you can be a man who makes a difference in the lives of the people around them. So that's our lesson. I'm praying for you right now as you break to your groups and look at these questions. I love you.